我哋呢個係出去彈啊，可以啦，出去彈兩粒，三粒四粒，加到四粒。警員開咗第6粒出去彈啊，方向向住海旁方向，向住海旁方向啊！
Does that Hong Kong Stock Exchange look in any way under threat?
Oh, absolutely. We saw the price significant collapse pretty much post the announcement of the new security law. Look, Hong Kong Stock Exchange has gone through significant uncertainties in the last 12, 18 months. They've simply moved from the escalating riot and then moved to the coronavirus impacted economic impact as well as lockdown. And now they have increasing security laws. So it's a very difficult time for for that region.
The US Secretary of State has issued a stern warning about any deals done with China under its Belt and Road Initiative. The Victorian government has been criticised for refusing to release federal government advice about the state's contentious economic partnership with China. Secretary Pompeo says he isn't aware of the specific details relating to Victoria's Belt and Road Initiative, but warned the US would be prepared to disconnect if the deal adversely impacted America's national security.
We will not take any risk to our telecommunications infrastructure, any risk to the national security elements of what we need to do with our Five Eyes partners. I don't know the nature of those projects precisely, but to the extent they have an adverse impact on our ability to protect telecommunications from our private citizens or security networks for our defense and intelligence communities, we will simply disconnect. We will simply separate. We're going to preserve trusted networks for important information. We hope our friends and partners and allies across the world, especially our Five Eyes partners like Australia, will do the same.
Has the coronavirus unwittingly exposed the real face of Chinese communism?
And I think that's a central question. My comments the other day reflected what has been decades of Western tolerance of behaviors that we don't accept from any place else. And the nature of the Chinese Communist Party now, I think, has become clear as a result of this coronavirus.
What can you, sir, tell us about the origins of COVID-19?
Yeah. So this is what authoritarian regimes do. They execute broad-based strategic disinformation campaigns to deflect attention from their own failures. They do that so that the world won't see them, but they also do that to maintain power inside their own country so that their own people will continue to be subservient to the Communist Party itself. Here's what we know. This virus originated in Wuhan, China, and the Chinese Communist Party has rigorously prevented the entire world from knowing the precise origins, who patient zero was, where they traveled, what actually happened inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology, how did this begin, how did this have the first human-to-human transmission. All of these things the world needs to know.
Today, the US is strategically dependent on China for antibiotics, essential batteries, rare earth metals and critical elements, vitamin supplements, even shipping containers, safety glass, laptops, cell phones, life jackets and anchors. As China continues to bully economies, experts say that to turn this around requires a decoupling and the forming of new partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region.
It's been a wake-up call to all of us, the realisation that the globalised world brings the enemy to our gates and in within them. And unless we take the steps to wake up from that complacency, the realisation that golden eras with a dictatorship in China who is setting out to destroy us.
The idea of decoupling from China's economy is already well established in the US and it has bipartisan support. It's also something that from day one President Trump said would be a priority.
Tear gas once again shrouds the streets of Hong Kong. Protests returned after China pushed for a strict new national security law for the territory under cover of the coronavirus. Opponents see this as the end of Hong Kong's one country, two systems relationship with China. The legislation that gives Beijing more surveillance powers is supported by Hong Kong's pro-Chinese legislators and local security chiefs. Beijing's rubber stamp assembly is expected to approve the law next week, but protests on the small island may prove difficult to stamp out.
The U.S. Air Force has announced that two B-1B Lancer bombers assigned to the 9th Expeditionary Bomb Squadron have completed a 24-hour mission that included a large force exercise. Air Force officials said B-1B aircrews completed a 24-hour mission to support Pacific Air Force's training efforts with allies, partners and joint forces, and strategic deterrence missions to reinforce the rules-based international order in the Indo-Pacific region.
The May 4th movement, it was very significant in the history of modern China because it was an attempt to throw off the sort of medievalism of the Qing dynasty and asking for democratic reforms, for universal education, literacy, all these concepts that we very much take for granted in the West. And unfortunately, for the people of China and for the world, the communists prevailed in 1949 over the Nationalist Party. It's a long and tortured history. But and we can go into that more in detail. But I'm also extremely disappointed with mainstream media for basically shutting out Mr. Pottinger's speech. I spent 3 hours watching corporate media yesterday, NBC, ABC, CNN. There was not one mention of the word China or of Hong Kong, which the Chinese Communist Party is moving in very, very fast to crush their democracy, their democratic system enshrined in the one country, two systems law that the British constructed. It's complete whitewash. It's just COVID, COVID, COVID all the time. And again, the narrative keeps coming back to blaming the White House, and it's not giving the White House any credit for this extraordinary speech by Mr. Pottinger in Mandarin, reaching the people of China. Very disappointing.
Mara, let me ask you, this is what I think people that tune into this show don't understand. They understand if the mainstream media is not going to cover Trump appropriately, or if it's not going to cover the conservative movement or the grassroots movement. They understand that. They understand there is a bias, and this kind of elitist a bias against that. I think what people are having trouble getting their arms around is how is the mainstream media not covering the most important story of our time, and they have not covered it. That is the rise of the Chinese Communist Party to be basically an existential threat, not just to the United States, but to free people throughout the world. This virus and how this virus got loose and how they exacerbated it, whether it came out of their lab or not, we know for the fact that once they found it was out, they lied about it, they exacerbated its spread, they've swept up PPE. I mean, their actions, even if it wasn't a bioweapons program, even if it didn't slip out of a lab, have been horrific and have been damning. And so how has the mainstream media failed to cover this, failed to cover the fact that they're all into our companies, that all of our capital, the hardworking people in this country have gone to finance their companies, that all these people you see all the time are just representatives of the Chinese Communist Party? How have the great papers of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, NBC, CBS, CNN, how have they missed the story?
Well, it's not that they've missed the story. They're deliberately not reporting on it, likely because of pressure from their shareholders and from the Chinese Communist Party. I would ask your intelligent viewers to, if you're watching War Room Pandemic, you know there's something very wrong going on here with China. Do a bit of research on the companies that are controlled. Do a little bit of research on the companies that control the media establishments that have tremendous influence and power in our society. NBC, for example, cut a lot of deals with the Chinese Communist Party many years ago for sports advertising. Whoops! Did we lose the connection?
I think you just came back. We have you now.
Okay. For example, Comcast, which owns NBC and other media companies, many years ago signed deals with the Chinese Communist Party for broadcasting. And of course, they own half of Hollywood. And that happened in recent years, particularly when former Democratic Senator of Connecticut, Chris Dodd, became the chief lobbyist for the Motion Picture Association and allowing censorship. And the New York Times every week takes color page ads from China Daily. And until they stop doing that, you're going to see a bias in their coverage. And I think it's frightening at this point when China has declared war on the world. And certainly as PLA generals and CCP spokesmen are saying war with America. They've been saying it for a very long time, as you know. But now the situation is getting very dire as they move on Hong Kong. Because if they succeed in crushing Hong Kong, that means Hong Kong is going to be the next Tibet. And the rest of the world has to be on guard and on alert. India could be next, Japan, Taiwan. And I just don't see any coverage about this in mainstream media. But I do see it on War Room Pandemic. So thank you, Steve.
Miles, we're going to have Jeremiah and other members of the whistleblower movement are going to join us starting in the next episode. Just one basic question. We got a couple of minutes left here in your segment. This is Matt Pottinger, the Deputy National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, on May 4th, actually addressed the Chinese people in Mandarin. Can you just tell our audience how powerful and how important was that for the Chinese people to hear that from a senior executive in the American government representing President Trump to address them in Mandarin and talk about the unity of the two peoples?
这个我们的伯明就是潘先生这个演讲呢，可以说在中国所有的中国人心目中是投下了巨大的震撼弹啊。 让我们呢似乎又回到了1919年的5月4号那个
It reminded us
1919年的5·4民主运动，有一个更重要的日子，就是1919年的6月3号，也是一个政府向人民民主
during the May 4th movement.
在那个政府啊，当时已经在接受了西方的民主和法治之后，出现了
the government who was in position back then.
啊。
was showered by the Western civilization. People such as Li Dazhao, those leaders.
大家要看到那个时候的美国，帮助中国最后解决了这个
We need to see that the America who helped us back during the May 4th movement, who have helped us to resolve this issue, this Shandong problem.
以及后来共产党在中国推行的啊，要实行。 美国一样的民主和法治的政治制度的时候，中国人民还相信了共产党，接受了共产党。那么今天在101年以后，由美国的这个副国务战略顾问来讲述一个今天被一个流氓的没有法治的政府，以及谈论中国完全失去了民主和法治，甚至连人的道德底线都没有的时候。
Under the CCP, passenger speech really impacted us, our whistleblower movement. Aligned with Mr. Bannon, aligned with people who want to help us, the government officials.
最为危险的就是排华就要发生的时候，把 CCP 冠状病毒和 CCP 偷美国技术。
It is dangerous that the idea of anti-China was introduced. The CCP was trying to achieve that.
讲述了中国人在101年前追求法治民主啊，并且将中国人民和
was important for the world to see that people from the May 4th movement are the same as we are today.
多少中国人在海外的人身安全，
This has protected us.
中国人和香港人。
Of people in China and abroad and Hong Kong, and encouraged us.
在这个关键的历史时刻，让我们更加尊敬美国的。
This speech is so valuable, and it happened at this historic moment.
庞皮奥先生、罗比奥先生
有良知
的美国官员，我们的爆料革命，无数的人
officials like Pompeo as well.
大家无限的感激，这是美国政府。 和美国有良知法治社会
We and all of us are very thankful to those officials and to the United States of America. It gives us courage and hope. We are firmly believed we are looking for democracy through
在
it.
这个历史时刻，我觉得这次讲话奠定了中国人未来和美国人要世代以后下去。现在是互联网的时代，这个没有人把全部真相可以掩藏起来。 通过我们的爆料革命和班
No one can bury the truth.
将这个伯明先生的这次重要讲话，啊，已经传遍了中国，引起了中国人民巨大的反响。中国人民我
Passenger
相信，因
speech
为这次
was
讲
spread
话
all over
更加的
China.
坚定，
It encouraged so many people in
美
China.
国以及西方文明的世界站在一起，再次的实现我们当年5·4运动。
We, along with the United States, we will once again achieve what happened like May 4th. We will stand together.
道德给世界带来的人道危机、灾难危机。